Well, hello there, and welcome to this episode of The Terri Cole Show. I want to start with asking you a question. Do you feel like when you're going through a rough time that you really don't have people that you can reach out to, right? Do you feel like you're sort of the go-to person for other people when they're going through a rough time, but do you not feel supported in the same way? If you're nodding your head yes, then this video is for you because today's video is all about how to assess the friendships that you're in, because so often, and I have been guilty of this myself many times, we stay in friendships longer than we need to. Friendships that have sort of expired, but we don't realize it. And I'm also going to help you figure out what is a healthy friendship. What is it that you are seeking in a friendship? How do we create mutuality? Because so many of you have written in and leave comments saying that you have difficulties in your friendship or friends that don't respect your boundaries, who don't show up for you. And hey, let this video be the beginning of that changing. So before I get into it, if you don't know me, my name is Terri Cole. I'm a licensed psychotherapist, a relationship expert, and the author of Boundary Boss, the Boundary Boss Workbook, and this book called Too Much, A Guide to Breaking the Cycle of High-Functioning Codependency. And you can get all of those books anywhere that you buy fine books. Before we get started, if you are new to this channel, introduce yourself in the comments, please. And please make sure you subscribe. I was saying this last week. We just hit 200,000 subscribers, which is so amazing and so exciting. But our data tells us that there's probably double that amount of people watching the videos and that means half the people watching are not subscribed. So please, it doesn't cost you a penny. If you want to do something for me, subscribe to my YouTube channel. And what I will do for you in return is continue to put out high quality, free content for you to uplevel every aspect of your life. That is my commitment to you. I also listen to you guys. I'm in the comment section with you. I care about what you want to learn about, and then I actually do videos on those things. So I feel like that is a nice, fair, even exchange. Thank you for all the questions and the comments that you guys leave. Let's move it on into today's content. All right, talking about relationships and friendships, there is so much about our home training and what we learn about boundaries and connectedness that impact the friendships that we have in our lives. I was always very influenced by if somebody wanted to be friends with me, that I almost felt like I was obligated to be friends with them, especially when I was more of a people pleaser in my teens and my 20s. I wonder if any of you had that. I was unaware that I had a choice. And it's interesting. In my youth, I've definitely had multiple friendships in my 20s for sure, where I needed to just break up with the person. One of the friendships, it was someone who was so possessive and so jealous of other friends. It was a very codependent relationship. I didn't even know what that meant at the time. But I really felt like, even though it wasn't a sexual or romantic relationship, I felt like this person was acting like she was my boyfriend. She would get mad at me. She's like, well, you didn't tell me that. Or you didn't tell me that you were going to see your friends from home this weekend. I'm like, dude, I don't have to tell you anything. So, I mean, it took a bit, but not that long for me to get out of that friendship. But there's lots of different ways that unhealthy friendships play out in our lives. They can come in all kinds of shapes and sizes. So why is that? What can it look like? Well, a lot of friendships we may stay in because we've been in those friendships for a really long time. I call that historical handcuffs, where you really feel obligated to someone and really don't feel like you have a right to not be friends with them. It's almost like the way that a lot of people feel about family. Sometimes we stay in less than healthy relationships because we don't want to be alone, right? Because we're afraid to not have people to spend time with, even if that doesn't make us feel good. What other reasons? Why do we feel obligated to people? I think a lot of times it's just being a loyal person. Like I felt like I was indiscriminately loyal in my younger life, which sounds weird, but you know what I mean? Where I was sort of the same loyalty to everybody. And that doesn't make sense, but I prided myself on being a loyal person. And then we have the whole downloaded, experience, like the unconscious mind experience, the repeating relationship reality experience, where let's just say that you had a very judgmental mother you may find yourself attracting female friendships in your life who are also very critical of you or very judgmental of you. So this is a repeating reality. This is where we need to try to understand where unresolved injuries from the past can compel us to repeat unsatisfying relationships in our present. So the 3 cues for clarity, which I know I've given you guys many times, but I will include it in the guide, terricole.com/guide, so you can see, because if you're in a repeating relationship reality friendship and you ask the 3 questions, who does this person remind me of? Where have I felt like this before? Or how or why is this behavioral dynamic familiar to me? If you had a punitive mother, you would be able to say, oh my gosh, this friend reminds me of my mean mother. And that's why I stay in this friendship, because I'm afraid and because I'm seeking her approval in the same way that I did with my mother. Once we know that, it is so much easier to get it right in our own mind, where we're able to say, okay, Betty is not mom. And I do not have to be friends with anyone. Like we have to be so clear that in our adult lives, all of our adult relationships, even with family, are voluntary. Meaning nobody is owed you. That makes sense? I mean, children are. If you have children, I feel like, certainly at least until they're not minors anymore. But I feel like old friends sometimes can feel very entitled to our time and our energy and our attention. That's a high cost to a friendship. And listen, with mutual friendships that are great, that you love, there's no problem with doing that. That's normal when it's mutual, but not if someone is very controlling, or not if someone is very demanding or very entitled. And you're the one who's sort of breaking your back to sacrifice for the relationship. Just be aware that even if you had a friendship that was long, right? You could have a childhood friend, and yet you may have outgrown that friendship. And it really is okay to outgrow friendships. This is just what happens in life sometimes. And I think that we have to give ourselves permission to change who we have in our lives, especially our VIP section, right? That is really important. What other kinds of unhealthy friendships are there? I mean, there's so many, but frenemies, right? People who are passive aggressive, who you don't really feel like are happy for you when you're winning in life, or people who are in competition with you. So they're a little bit jealous of anything you accomplish or anything that you have, which is a drag. You know those friends. You know them. When something good happens to you, you hesitate to think about telling that person, because there's a part of you that really knows they're only so capable of being happy for you. But in their mind, they're thinking, but what about me? When does good things happen for me? You also have the friends who are like the doomsday friends, who they're only great friends when your life is in the shitter. When things are terrible for you, when you're in pain, they could be really, really good friends. But they're also the people that when your life is going well, they're kind of not that happy for you. They can't be supportive of that. That is really painful. And then you have the, as I was talking about before, the unhealthy, the controlling or the bullying friendships, the people who feel like friendship is ownership. And it's really not. Remembering that all your adult relationships are voluntary can be very empowering for you. So let's talk a little bit about, because I want to help you figure out where you are in your friendships right now. I'm going to give you in the guide, there'll be 20 questions of an assessment, which I'm going to ask you a couple of them within this episode itself, but then you're going to go and do them yourself. But let's talk about signs and symptoms that a friendship might be past its expiration date. When your phone rings and you see it's them and you have a feeling of dread, or you get a text from them and you immediately sort of have like a feeling in your gut where you're like, ugh. If you spend time with them, you feel drained as hell afterwards. We really have to pay attention to, do I feel exhausted from being with someone, or do I feel energized after being with someone? Because those are vastly different experiences. If you spend a lot of time thinking or worrying about them, like what they're going to think about something or how they're going to feel about something or telling them something, if you walk on eggshells around them, if you feel like you're codependent with them, right? If you don't feel seen, understood, right? If it's really they're into telling you what to do, kind of bossing you around, but you don't really feel like they're trying to understand you, or maybe they just don't have the capacity to, that those are some of the things that you might be experiencing if you might want to rethink the relationship. And how can we do that? Well, you'll do the assessment, but then you really have to think to yourself, do you trust the person? Do you respect them? Right? And as friendships, do we bring out the best in each other or not? Because a lot of times sometimes I would work with someone, and if they were like a total gossip, like I could see the lower part of myself come out and like participate in that, which is not, that to me is somebody bringing out the worst in me. I'm not blaming them. I took responsibility for my own behavior, but I noticed it. And then when I got healthier and was able to set boundaries, I was able to say, you know what? All this gossiping is just such a negative vibe. It's not my thing. I'm not interested. So let's get to some of the questions. So friendship inventory, which I'm giving to you in the guide, terricole.com/guide. The first question is the friendship unbalanced? Right? Do you feel like you give and the other person takes? And again, this is not about blaming. What we are doing with this friendship inventory, this is data collection. That is what we're doing. So it's not about making anyone wrong. It's just about you getting real with yourself about how you're living in these relationships. Second question to think about, are they critical of you and your choices? Do they use humor? Like, do they put you down in kind of a passive, aggressive way? Are they judgmental rather than supportive of who you are? Because it's funny, I think back to my 20s and think about these friendships, some that I ended, and so much of the time I felt judged by them. Or whatever I said I was doing, they always had a better way for me to do it. Like there was a lot of control elements in those unhealthy relationships. And I think that in my 20s, I had a tendency to put other people on a pedestal, to really like think that everyone else knew in a way more than I did. And I really found out through lots of therapy and growing up some that actually wasn't true. And that I had a lot to offer as well, but it was almost like I came from this one down position. And then you have the friendships where it might be you always rescuing them, right? You always helping them to figure out their problems. Maybe it's the friend that calls you, even though they know that you get up early and that you go to bed early, but calls you to vent about the same thing, about the same person, about the same shitty relationship or the same shitty job that they're in, that they have no intention of changing. But they get off the phone with you and they feel so much lighter, and you feel like a toxic waste dump that someone just dumped all over you. It is so exhausting. And listen, I'm not saying our first step on the train with any of these problematic friendships is to ditch every person. It's not that. For a lot of these situations, an actual conversation and a boundary would be super helpful, right? That might do the trick, because you really have to think about for yourself, how often or how much are you telling the truth about what you have a problem with in the friendships that you think are problematic? Because we always have to look at our 50%. And again, it's not blaming. We're not looking at our 50% so we can feel bad about ourselves. We're looking at our 50% of the relationship, meaning every relationship that we're in is half us and half the other person. So we have to be aware if someone is doing something that you don't like and you don't speak up, you are setting that relationship up to fail. So if that's hard for you, then go watch some of my boundary setting things. Get my book, Boundary Boss. There's boundary setting in Too Much as well, right? You might be a people pleaser. You might be over functioning, and that would be then get the Too Much book, because that's what that's all about. But again, we end up resenting the other person, even though a lot of the times we have not said anything. We are not telling them what we do need or what we can't deal with, you know? You might also be dealing with people who are moody, right? This can be someone who vacillates between being sort of energetic and up. It's kind of exhausting to be around them, or always sort of down and depressed. And either way, especially if you're a high-functioning codependent or an HFC or an empath, just a straight empath, people's moods can really unduly impact you and how you feel. You can leave that situation feeling exhausted if someone is super high energy, or even if they're super depressed and low. Both of those things can impact you. And then the next question is just, are they angry? Are they volatile? This can be them exploding over small things or not telling you how they feel until they erupt. It's interesting. Because of my aversion to anger, I don't usually attract explosive people because my tolerance for it is so low. Now, I can handle people's anger, but explosive anger is something it's just not my thing. I'm not into it. It makes me not trust someone if they behave that way. But I want you to think about, what are you tolerating in these relationships that are in your life? What do you want to be different? Because once you go through, and I just went through 5 of the questions, the assessment is actually 20 questions long. So just go to terricole.com/guide, and all of that will be in there for you. But I think that there's something about, a lot of times we feel guilty about wanting to make a change. Like we feel bad asking for what we need. And listen, there's also a reality. You know, once you do the assessment, you're going to take your time and figure out, do you need boundaries? Do you need a clarifying conversation? Or has this friendship run its course? Those are probably going to be the 3 options that you have. But then there's a 4th option, and this is something that I want you to think about, because sometimes we need something other than friendship, right? Sometimes we need a community of like-minded people to support us on our growth journey that maybe our friends from home can't do. This is exactly why I created Terri Cole membership, which you guys can check out at terricole.com/TCM for Terri Cole membership. Don't worry, all the links will be in the show notes as well. But sometimes we need like-hearted, like-minded people in our lives to support us. And in the membership, I go live every week. We do Q&As every single week, so 4 times a month, which is so much fun, and I love it so much. But it's a real community. So if you are seeking connection and a real community, that might be for you. And I also have my mastermind coming up. We start February 1. So it's called Flourish. And this is a small group for entrepreneurial women. Could be for therapists as well. Literally, I just got a call from my group 2 years ago. The women all stayed friends. They still meet weekly. And that 4 of them were together in Paris. And they literally FaceTimed me being like, hello, you made this happen. We're in Paris together. We love you. And it's just amazing what can happen when you ask for what you need. And especially with the mastermind is for ambitious women who, a lot of times when we're ambitious, it's really hard to get the support you want from other people, because a lot of times our ambition will threaten the people in our lives. So if you are looking for actual support with your business, but also with your emotions, the mastermind might be for you if you're a business owner or an entrepreneur or a therapist. And the community, which is $59 a month or $590 for the year to be in the community, which gives you 2 months for free. You know, that is a totally different thing. The mastermind is more intensive, and there's only room for 10 people, and it's more expensive. And then you have the community that is for everyone. So anyway, all the info will be in the show notes. But I just want you to have whatever it is that you need in your life. And I know the value of healthy, robust friendships where you can actually be yourself. And they're just as important in my life, my friendships, because many of you know I've had the same friends for many, many years, decades and decades and decades, actually, that they're as important to me, my female friendships, as my marriage. They really are. That's how much they add to the quality of my life. So anyway, I hope that this episode added value to your life. And if you're interested in the membership or the mastermind, go to the links that I provide. I hope you guys have the most amazing week. And as always, take care of you.